So for our project this week, we are going to try our hand at sampling in GarageBand. And the traditional way of sampling is through, I guess what is traditional really, but we've been talking about using a sampler keyboard to sample our sounds. We found out last week that the sampler function on GarageBand isn't really something we can use. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to kind of just bring audio files into our project in a rhythmic way. And let me play a few examples. So I built as a starting point just this drum pattern. Hopefully we can hear that. And I brought in a sample, and I'll step us through this in a minute. But this is a sample from the Brahms Fourth Symphony, which you can download from D2L's weekly 11. So that's a sound file that is sliced out of Brahms' Fourth Symphony, right? That's from the 19th century. So let's see what we can do with that. And so bringing it into GarageBand and editing its sound file properties, we can sort of play around with using it in a rhythmic way. Right? So we can isolate and create rhythmic loops with sound files. Right? So we can use those recordings, chop them up, and change their properties to align them with the pulse that we're using in GarageBand, and it's pretty fun. I can also add, of course, effects to this track and have a lot of fun with things like that. But so first, let's go ahead and download this folder of samples to get started. In D2L, you'll find a zipped folder of samples. If you download it, you'll get a zip file that, if you double click on the zip, please, it'll unpack it into a folder that contains 6 audio files. And they're all kind of different. The Brahms one is here, and the Stravinsky one is also really fun. It's from the Rite of Spring. Which is already pretty rhythmic. Right, and we've got a couple of other sound files that are actually, these are kind of taken from Max MSP, but that's okay. So we got all these different kinds of sounds. Oof, that one's loud. And this one here, right? That's a jaw harp. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring those into GarageBand and build them around a drum beat. So if we have GarageBand open, okay, I'm going to save this and create a new one. We'll start over. And so I encourage you to follow along with this as we build together a basic drum beat and incorporate a sample. Because what's nice about Digital Audio Workstation is you can go into that sample and change its timing and align it with the pulse. So remember that we're building a drum beat as well from scratch. So I'm going to turn our metronome down to about 90 or so. I need to work with a slower tempo. And I'm going to select a drum kit, and I'm going to go with this one. And I'm going to turn on looping and create a 1 measure loop. I can hit the E key to open the editor, which will allow me to either click in um, and create a simple pattern. And I can also play in. If I hit record, oof, that is not quantized. So let me go in here and hit the quantize function. Hopefully this is kind of a review. Oops, too long. All right, so I'm just building a basic drum pattern. Okay, so I've got a drum loop that I've built, and I can loop it out as much as I want to now that I've got it all sequenced and quantized. Any questions about doing this, making this process work, creating a loop, hitting record and overdubbing, or click assigning your drum pattern? Everybody's, I think, doing a really great job of doing that in your projects, so that's awesome. So let's now go into here and make an audio track. So in order to work with a sample, we need it to be an audio track, not a instrument track. So let's add a track that is audio and hit create. And if you've downloaded this, this stuff, we can bring it in here. So let's take our Brahms and drag it into our track. Now, notice that this is a bit of a long audio file, and I caution you not to use audio files that are too big. If you download like a file that is multiple minutes in length, it will get cumbersome to work with in a DAW because of its large size. Sometimes it's best to bring it into Audacity, chop it into something smaller, and then export it as a sample, and then bring it in to GarageBand. But anyway, so if I bring this Brahms excerpt in, so it doesn't quite line up the way I want it to. So if I solo this and I got my metronome on, I can go into my editor with the E key and start editing my sample. So I'm going to make this much smaller. So already it's kind of aligning. It's not really quite there yet. So I'm going to make this kind of, I can adjust the beginning, shorten up the beginning a little bit, and move it back over to the beginning of my loop. So hopefully you can kind of hear and see the change of chord from the first one to the second one. The transients aren't really extremely clear, but we can kind of see it. What I'd like to do is adjust the bounds of each chord so that they line up on the beat. And we can do that with what's called flex. So over here on the top left side of your editor is this double helix guy, right? And that's called flex. And that allows you to adjust the beginnings and endings of your imported audio to fit the pulse, which is kind of awesome. So if I turn on the flex thing, the flex button, if hopefully you see that here, I can grab this region right around where the first transient is of my second chord, click into the region, and I create this line, and I can drag it over to beat 3 of my loop. It's kind of magical. Okay, so let me play that again, and you can hear the difference. This is the original. Right? It doesn't quite line up halfway, but if I move my flex over and shorten the loop, it aligns with my pulse, right? It aligns perfectly. It's kind of awesome. Like I say, it's pretty magical. I would try that and see if you can get that to work for you. This with this flex button, right? And if you have questions, let me know. So we can align this. Right now, it's lined up perfectly with my drum pattern, and I can turn it into a section of a song. I can also apply effects to it with the smart controls, the B key. Right, I go down here to plugins. I can add effects, like maybe a. Oh no, I want a different one. Maybe a delay. And let's do this. Triplet. And we'll do left feedback, right mix, left mix. So you can manipulate this to be whatever you like it to be. You can also go down into the editor and transpose this whole thing. Remember, we were looking at records and how they use the records to transpose and speed up. Well, because it's digital, pitch and time are independent. So we can transpose this to be low or high, independent of speed, which is also magical. Right? I can change this completely. So now that it is detuned, looped, and now a part of my tempo framework. How you doing? Are there any questions? Are we all getting this to work? It is addictive. I find it addictive in a good way. Not like peanut M&Ms addictive, which is my new addiction, which is an addiction in a bad way, in my opinion, because they're all over my house. The struggle is real. Let's try that process again with another sample. So let's bring in Stravinsky. And again, I'm going to isolate with the loop function one measure or two. Let me make this actually two measures. And instead of Brahms, I'm going to sample Stravinsky, who I'm sure would not mind if we were sampling his stuff, because Stravinsky was pretty cool. Okay, so notice that does not align in the least. So we're going to go into the editor by hitting the E button, and we're going to make this view manageable somehow. Okay. So these are the two big rhythmic hits. I'm going to try to isolate them by trimming my region. Like so, okay. Okay, so I need to kind of interpret that and make that a part of my sequence. And I can sort of go into this here and align. This is hard to do in this editor, but you can align the transients of this hit with, maybe I want this to be on beats 2 and 3. So I go into the flex, engage the flex capacitor, go back in here, and drag this out so that it aligns on 8.3. And I can even zoom this out a little bit. And I can even move this one, move this one over to be beat 4. I think I can move it over. It's not moving for me. Hold on. Oops. I made something sort of get weird here, so I'm going to try to move this one over a little bit. It's too many. Yeah. Sometimes it has to do too much magic and it won't quite work. Yeah, I don't really like that as much. But you get the gist. And it's also, again, super fun. So sometimes this doesn't quite always work so that you can just loop it out. Sometimes you have to actually copy and paste it into every measure to make it work. Or you can put it into the other bar with the effects on it. Maybe see if that works. No, I don't like it as much. So basically what we're doing this week is um, making a project that has, again, another sort of 1 to 2 minute sequence that includes a sample. And you can use a sample from the samples folder that you just downloaded from D2L. Or you can incorporate something that you find. You can incorporate multiple samples. Notice that a lot of the examples we were using today were using samples from Grandmaster Flash in that old excerpt from the 70s and from the 80s was using records that had like sci-fi movie uh, you know um, sound effects, or also jazz records, 70s dance hall records, things with good interesting sounds in them, things with like vibraphones and other organ sounds and things that are kind of unusual that you can make work in a rhythmic way. Um, and so there's lots of things you can use. If you want to use a recording of yourself saying something or singing something, that is also, of course, allowed. I've got a sample of myself saying hi there that I was planning on using with an actual keyboard sampler. Didn't work out last week, but you can use that as well. So you're going to use a sample. Your sample must be taken from the samples folder on D2L, or it can be your own audio file. If you use your own sample, it must be a short audio excerpt so that it's easy to work with. You can edit any audio file into a short sample using Audacity if you need to trim it. You can also record yourself singing or playing something in order to sample it. Your sample must be used in a rhythmic way so that it aligns with the tempo and meter of your GarageBand project file. You will crop your sample to create a loop, which will align with your project rhythmically. Your project must also include drum set or drum beat that you sequence and 2 other sequenced MIDI tracks to accompany this. So let's say I want to make a bass line with this. I'll create another software instrument and I'll find a synth bass. And let's see. Let's try that one. And you're just going to, again, kind of record a little something. Doesn't have to be doesn't have to be much, right? It can. So anyway, you're kind of playing around with all these things combined, quantizing your sequences. Putting effects on layers, adding layers to this, and working with other instruments in the sound library. And of course, when you're done, you turn off your metronome, export song to disk, and upload it to the Dropbox. Easy peasy, right? Any questions? Let's see. The only thing I can think of that we didn't cover is editing a sample in Audacity. So let's say I take my Brahms sample, it's way too big. I open it in Audacity, quite simply. And sometimes you just need multiple audio programs to get things done. So let's say I just want, let's say I just want that part, right? Let's say I just want that part of the file. So I'm going to delete everything else. And again, this is where we use our audio editing techniques of finding transients and isolating, getting rid of everything. Back. Okay, it's still a little weird. I'm going to zoom in, maybe, if I remember how to zoom. Not like the phone call zoom, but like the actual looking for stuff zoom. Ah, there it is. And we're going to edit that out. Okay, and then you can save or export, save as MP3, and then Brahms sample chord, and then you can save it wherever you like. Desktop is fine. And then you can incorporate that into your thing without doing a whole lot of trimming, which can sometimes be a little daunting, especially if it's really long. Like if you're downloading a whole song to use and you just want the little the little break beat in the middle, you can pull the whole song up in Audacity and trim out the break beat and then use that. So here's my Brahms sample right here, and then I could just bring that in, and it's this nice, neat little audio file that isn't hard to work with. It's just one nice sort of small sample. And of course, you can reverse. If you go down here into your editor, all these cool options, you can reverse playback and then flex it out, and then change its parameters. Right? So this gets pretty fun pretty fast. I hope you enjoy it. Are there any questions about this process? Are you stoked to get